you kind of know in your gut that I'm going to do it, but it sounds really crazy, but I'm going to do it. And I did it.
Hello and welcome to The Secret of My Success. This is a podcast where we explore what it means to live a fulfilling life. I'm your host, Erin Curran. Thank you so much for joining. Today's episode, I am having a conversation with Dori Juhasz. Now, Dori's mission is to empower women to step into their full power by breaking free from self-doubt and limiting beliefs. She helps them reprogram their subconscious mind and release trapped emotions from their body. As a result, they can overcome mental blocks, build unshakable confidence, and create a life that truly excites them. In her approach, she integrates traditional coaching, mindfulness practices, somatic healing, NLP, embodiment techniques, and inner child work in order to help women transform their lives from the inside out. Having lived location independent now for several years really brings a unique perspective to her sessions. Enjoy the episode. Okay, welcome, Dori. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm excited to create this conversation and discover where we go. Normally, when I start with my guests, I like to ask if there is some sort of an event in your life or some sort of a time that was really powerful and instrumental in getting you where you are. Where would you like to begin?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me in the podcast. Looking forward to this conversation. Wow. Okay. If we jump right in,
I, I don't mess around.
I would, I would say definitely if I would have to pick one episode where I would say that there is a before and an after, that would have been 7 years ago when I or decided to go to Cuba, and I ended up becoming a digital nomad instead. And that was definitely one decision what changed my life and affected everything basically in my life and how I look at things.
Wow. So 7 years ago, you decided to go to Cuba and then chose to become a digital nomad. So the first question that comes up is like, why did you go to Cuba? That's kind of a strange place to end up.
I wanted to go to Cuba because I love dancing and I love salsa, especially Cuban salsa. And Cuba was always a destination that I had in my mind, like one day I will go there, one day. And it's so different, or I imagine it like that. It's just so different. And then sometimes, I think I was literally just at home and asking myself, like, I really have this desire. So why am I putting it aside? Who am I waiting for? What am I waiting for? Like, why don't just go and just do it now, like. And yeah, this is, of course, this was a longer inner dialogue, but basically eventually this is how I just decided that I'm just gonna go.
So what was in, like, I get the salsa and the dancing. Was there an event? Did you go with friends, or are you the kind of person, you're just a brave soul, you picked up and you went on your own?
Yeah, that's why I think it took me a little bit to just figure out, like, how am I gonna make this happen, because I didn't want to wait for anyone to come with me, so I decided that I'm just gonna go alone and I'm gonna do a solo trip. What happened is I started preparing, let's say, with holidays, not taking any days off during the summer, because I figured November would be a better time to go there, and escape a little bit the cold that it will approach at that time in Europe. So this was the plan. And what happened is that in August, I went to a 2-day event in Hungary. And basically, I met a lot of people who live location independently, who have their own businesses. And this was always my dream. I knew that I want to have my own business and I want to travel a lot. And an opportunity came that in September there was an event taking place on a cruise ship, and I could cross the Atlantic Ocean with them and go from Spain to Panama. And just, it's a conference, so I can learn a lot and I can surround myself with people who live like this. And it's kind of like the feeling when you think, when the person is telling you like, this is crazy, like I cannot, like, no, my plan is I will leave Europe in November. And what you were mentioning is at the end of September. It's like 7 weeks from now. And basically you kind of know in your gut that I'm gonna do it, but it sounds really crazy, but I'm gonna do it. And I did it. I quit my job, gave back my apartment, and in 7 weeks I found myself in Spain and ready to embark on this ship, which actually just started. Like, it was not only embarking the ship, but really embarking my new life.
Oh my goodness. Wow. That's courageous, really. And I love how it's, I hear that you started with this idea of something fun to do would be dancing. I love dancing and I love salsa, which they do in Cuba. Do you speak Spanish?
Yeah, more or less.
Okay, so,
Más o
it's
menos.
not a tremendous stretch, so like you could get there and you could be on your own. And so once you set that idea in motion, all of a sudden the universe started lining up, conspiring to support you on this journey. Is that kind of how it went?
Yeah, this is definitely how it feels. It's kind of like when people say that you're one decision away from a completely different life. And this is, for me, this is this decision. But what's very important, I think, and this is how I look back at it, that like you need to make that decision. Like, the choice is yours, but you need to make it, and then doors will open up.
Hmm. It's really powerful. I'm reminded of something someone once told me. I heard something many years ago. It's like God provides the soil, the seeds, the rocks, and all of this, but it's up to you to make the garden beautiful. You
Yeah.
have all of the resources that you need, but each of us is our own artist with the palette.
Yes. So
Hmm.
true.
So you were living in Hungary, and this is where you're from, correct?
Yes.
Your life is going along, and you decide to go to Spain. The cruise takes you over to Panama, and then you go to Cuba, right?
Well, that was the plan, but what happened is, obviously, like at that time when I was already on this conference, like so many things just happened. So I didn't have actually anything booked right after when I arrived to Panama. I just knew that, okay, now I'm in this spontaneous thing that I'm just going to be spontaneous and I will go with the flow. So I arrived to Panama in October, but I only made it to Cuba in February. In
Oh,
the meantime, I was just traveling with a group of friends that I met on this conference. We went, yeah, we stayed in Panama. Many of us stayed in Panama. Then we went to Colombia. Then I went to Mexico, did my diving certificate, and then I ended up finally in Cuba.
and February
Yeah.
in Cuba is a beautiful time of year.
Yes.
I'm here in South Florida, which Cuba is only 100 and some miles away from where I am.
Yeah. It was really, really nice time. And it was not only to be there, but the feeling of like you making a big dream happen and you made it happen, and like all of the things that you did before. And like by the time I arrived there, I was almost like a different person.
Super powerful. Do you mind if I back up just a little bit?
Sure.
Okay, perfect. Because, part of the reason why I created the podcast and have these conversations is because there are going to be people who are listening and going, wow, that's really amazing. Oh my gosh, she must be magical. And that's not really it. So, how was the experience for you coming up to the decision and choosing to step away from that life? Like, How did you get there?
Well, it's yeah, of course, like this what I just shared in a few sentences, it's been like weeks and, to be very honest, like months. So I think the first thought or this very, very strong desire started to build up like in April. And I made a decision, I think by July for sure, that it's going to happen. And then things started to escalate from there. And of course, like this is a time I think when you're very, like I was very like scared, like this is normal. Like even 2 days before I knew that I'm gonna leave, I was like, this is crazy, like I don't think that you should do it, and let's just call it off. This is way too scary, unknown, like you have no certainty whatsoever. But there is something inside of you that tells you that this is so exciting and like this is going to be really, really good, that you just go for it. um, and this is, I think, for me, one of the boldest decisions I ever made and one of the boldest moves I ever did, and I never regretted it. But of course there's a lot going on, so you constantly, like, you go back and forth in your own mind, your self-doubt and your inner critic, and every thought that, it's just like working against you is just like, no, this is crazy, you're clearly not doing it. But then you kind of like circle all the time back to this thought, like, but what if, like, what if I would do it, what if it would work out?
Mm.
And then you talk, I started mentioning it to like a few friends, my family. This is a good thing for me, like that, even though my family is like, okay, like this is a little bit crazy, but like, like we only live once, like they all like to travel. So they were not like the ones pushing and pulling me back. They were like, yeah, just go for it, do it. And then, we are here. So anytime you can come back. So you kind of have that, I think, some kind of safety net when it comes to like friends and family. Like worst comes first, like I need to have, like obviously savings, and I'm pretty much of the safety player in this, so I would not wait until the very last moment when I don't have money to buy even like a flight ticket or whatever. So it's kind of like I'm a safety player, so I have savings. And then it's, I think, for me, what helped me to make this bold decision was that I was already, I did a coaching certificate a year before. And the reason why I did it is because I wanted to develop, like I wanted to analyze myself better, ask myself the right questions, figure out sometimes like what are the things that are keeping me sometimes stuck or in one place, what's important. So I had this tool to ask myself the right questions at that time, like, okay, what is it that you're afraid of, like what is the worst thing that can happen if you go for it, and like which, you ask yourself, like, which one would you regret more, that you would go for it, or if you would stay, in this comfort and the safety that you are right now. I think it's just like, yeah, you just figure out that no, this is something that I really want to do, and I'm gonna do it, and try to be kind of like prepared for what could go wrong, but not over plan and not focus too much on that.
Right, right. You want to make sure that you're feeding the right horse, so to
Yeah,
speak. Um,
exactly.
that's absolutely powerful. I was speaking with my social media coach yesterday, and I had seen one of her posts the day before on Facebook. She said something along the lines of, "Yeah, I see your post about you just made $30,000 with one social media post, but what about the 20 touch points that happened before that?" Because the truth of the matter is, overnight success is usually over several months, if not several
Mm-hmm.
years prior. And what I hear inside of your magical overnight transformation is really you had been preparing for this for quite some time in various ways, right?
Exactly.
And here's the funny thing that I have experienced in my life, on my journey. is I may not always know the direction that I'm going, but if I'm always following my heart in those day to day, moment to
Hmm.
moment choices, eventually this vista opens up and I'm given this opportunity that I wouldn't have imagined in my wildest dreams and cannot say no to, because this is the obvious ending to all of the preparation that I've been doing.
Yeah, exactly. I think you said something super like crucial there, that you follow the heart, which some people call it like I follow the heart. Like sometimes I say that I you just follow the excitement. Like
Mm,
what excites you, because we're here to live, not just to survive and just go from one day to another. Like we want to experience, I think, life. And and sometimes for me, experiencing means that I just want to go and travel and just experience the whole world, because that's what excites me right now. So it's super powerful, I think, and it's really important that we follow that. And of course, with reason, because not everyone can just do. I was lucky enough that I was in a position in my life that I was at that time single. I had savings. I had supporting friends and family. So I could make this decision. And of
mm.
course, like not everyone can just do like, okay, I'm just pack up my life and just go. But there are things that I think we can all do, and to bring this excitement into our lives.
Yes. I think that that's really a key point. And there's a piece that I would like to dig into a little bit more. It's this idea of luck. Because fortune does favor the bold. And so there are opportunities that appear to be magical. But there are also, I think, there, like, your savings didn't just happen overnight. It may happen that you were single at the time, which, may or may not be something that you planned. It it's true. It sounds like you have a very supportive family network, which not everybody does.
Hmm.
But it's also, I feel like you coached yourself through the process as well, because a year before you had any idea that any of this was going to happen, you were going for a coaching certification, which then equipped you to be able to coach yourself through the process, asking the right questions. That's invaluable. And that, while it feels like it's fortunate, sometimes there's this game plan that's going on behind the scenes that we may not always be aware of, right?
Yes, so true.
Let me ask, how far back have you always had like an adventurous spirit? Are you the kind of person who's always followed the excitement? I love that turn of phrase that you've used. Is that something that's just always been a part of you?
Yes, I always knew that I'm not gonna spend majority of my life in Hungary, and I will live somewhere else. I didn't know at that time that this kind of lifestyle that I live right now, like completely location independent, is a thing. So I did, for example, like I moved to Geneva, to Switzerland, with my boyfriend when we were going through university, and we just took like 6 months off, and we went there. So that was also like already like for me part of that adventurous side of me. Like yes, it's already started happening. Then a few years later, when I was already working, and like I also come from a family, I have to say, like where both of my parents, my mom is an accountant, and she always worked from home since I was a kid. My dad is an entrepreneur, and any time when I needed to go somewhere, my dad could be there and just take me there, because there was no like 9 to 5 or whatever. So for me, this concept of 9 to 5 was never something that I grew up with. So when I started working 9 to 5, and it was the same for my sister, I suffered. I like, this is not okay. This should not be like this, especially like you have like limited holidays and all of that. And I remember the first summer came, and I was like, okay, if I cannot get paid holidays, but I will just go and just try to talk to them like, can I get like unpaid holidays, because I don't want to be here for the summer. So I approached my boss at the time with my very first job that I had when I was like 23 or something. And I approached like, I have this idea that I would like to go to Spain for the summer for 6 weeks, and would like to use 3 weeks of my paid holiday and three for unpaid holiday. And he looks at me like I'm a complete crazy lunatic. Like, what is this? Like, no one does this. And of course not. And I was like, okay, then I guess I quit. Here's my notice. And he was like, I'm sorry, what? And I'm like, yes, I told you that I would like to do this. Like, I understand that it's not possible, but I will still do it. So then I will just quit. And I did. So I did it on purposely, like I had like 4 weeks of notice, I think. So I did it like 5 weeks before or something. So I definitely can do it. And I was prepared to like walk away. So I did all the time like things like this before as well. So it was not the first time when I completely jumped into unknown.
Mm.
For me, it was, yeah, I have this feeling of like I want to do my way, and like, yeah, even just like having, let's say, a 9 to 5 job and a boss, like they're not gonna stop me if I really want to do something. So I think I always had this.
It sounds like it. What do you mind if I ask? What was your job at the time?
Oh, I was working in a center, like an office center, as
Mm.
a operational manager. So it was basically like my very first thing is like, okay, let's just start doing something. It was not something that I really enjoyed or cared about, I guess. So it was also not something that like, oh my God, I'm going to lose on this big
Yeah,
opportunity.
which is really key because I think what I hear is you were very clear on your priorities and what was important to you. Would that be fair to say? And so then, I also really, I acknowledge you for being honest and upfront with your boss and just saying, this is what I'd like to do. And I'd like to see if there's a way for us to work it out.
Yeah. It's something that I think it's very not common. Um, and people just not necessarily react the way that like, hey, there could be a solution, let's work it out. It's just like, this is not something that we do here. Like, okay, that's
Yeah,
fine.
fine. If this isn't something we do here, maybe this is not my place.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
I think can be really confronting for people because, like you say, we're not really trained to be engaged in honest dialogue with other people.
Yeah, but this also, I think my personality is also quite, it brought me, let's say, challenging situations, because I'm the one who want to understand why something is the way how it is. So for me, just taking it that this is how we do things here, this is not an answer. It's just like, explain to me why. So I always challenged my managers in that way. And I had actually the job that I quit right before I started nomading. That's where I had the manager who really appreciated it. And that was my first experience having someone like, okay, I explained to you, and like, we work it out. So she was actually like quite cool in that. And I like that. And I appreciate it in someone when it's not the usual answer, just the way this is how we do things here.
Yeah. Like the question for me is how is evolution possible if you're not able to ask why we do something in a particular way? Like,
Yeah.
where do you go from there if you're not allowed to ask?
Yeah, exactly.
So, you and I met through social media, right?
Yeah.
So we're just getting to know each other. You've, from what I understand, you are a coach and you coach people. What do you coach people on? Is there a particular area of life? Do you teach people how to do what you do, or is there something more specific?
Yeah, so I coach people. I have to say, yeah, I became again like, so I had the coaching certificate, and I I did some things in between, but now finally full time back in coaching. And um, currently, what I'm doing is like I'm really helping and empowering women to fully step into their power and break free from self doubt and the limiting beliefs, which I think in that sense, my story is quite inspiring because I did many times this in my life. So I help them really to reprogram their mind and also to release these trapped emotions and these imprints from their body. So as a result, they really can overcome like all of these mental blocks that they put themselves and like they have in their minds, and all of these negative thought patterns, and break free from this cycle of feeling sometimes like this stuck, that oh, I want to do something, but why am I keep going in the same circle, and then just build up the confidence and the courage to create the life that truly excites them.
Mm. I think that's really powerful. It's like we go through life, especially people who you have been extraordinarily fortunate with a mother who was professionally working from home and a father who's an entrepreneur, not only showing you a different way of working, but also being entirely supportive of a way that they were unfamiliar with, right? But for the rest of us here in the working world, the way we were trained and conditioned by friends and family and structures, like the bosses that you were trying to have these honest conversations with, didn't come from this kind of a context.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, first of all, where do you believe people get these ideas and beliefs from? Like these limiting beliefs that hold us in place?
Well, the way I see it, and this is what I experienced and learned as well from all the trainings that I did, is that the reason why we have these is basically it's a protection mechanism from all of us. It's not that it's there to hold us back. It's basically why we have this is because it tries to keep us safe. So the way I always explain it, if someone asks, is that imagine that you have like a tape recorder in your head and it's constantly on in the first like 8 or 10 years in your life, constantly on, records everything that happens to
Mm.
you, around you, in your environment. And basically, the reason why it's constantly on is like it gathers as much data as possible. So for the future, it can help you make better decisions and choices. So
Mm.
if something happens to you when you are 5 or 6, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a big thing or around you, something, for example, I don't know, you speak up or you say something, and then your, I don't know, a teacher or your mom or your dad or caretaker just like shouts at you like, no, just it's not the time, for you to speak, or like, and really gets a reaction from you, either a physical reaction or like an emotional, that oh my god, like I'm scared, or like some emotion comes up. What happens is that your, basically you stop for a second, this tape recorder just goes back and like, okay, what happened right before this happened, right before you had that pain, and then for the future, to avoid that pain, it tries to keep you safe and try to avoid those kind of situations. So if this happens to you when you're a kid, then it's no secret that probably in the future when you are an adult, you might be super afraid of like public speaking or speaking in front of like a group, because you had this association that this is painful. No, 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 don't go there. So then you will have this limiting belief about yourself, and this is what as an adult we can work on and figure out. And you don't need to go and discover what was that moment. That's not important. Then what important is that to figure out what is the limiting belief and what is the feeling that you have there. What is that feeling that is an unprocessed feeling, and go into the feeling and really feel it, and then it can go away, and it will take away most of these beliefs, and you can create new ones.
Really like powerful. One of the things that I've been exploring lately inside of this because, like, what you say is absolutely true. We are sponges up until the
Mm-hmm.
time we're between 6 and 8 years old. This is scientifically proven. It's talked about in landmark education. I've been doing a Joe Dispenza program, and he talks about the tape recorder, the sponge, all of this stuff. One of the aspects that I think is something that we forget, because with therapy, you're supposed to lay down on the couch and talk about your mother and all of these times when you weren't heard and, cry your way through it. I believe that expressing the emotions does come with experiencing them. Like Michael Singer talks a lot about this in The Untethered Soul. We block the experience because it's
Mm-hmm.
painful.
Mm-hmm.
But then when we release the experience, that pain that we stopped didn't go away. It just got stopped. And so now it's going to be coming up through us. And what you point to is really key. You don't have to know what happened or where it came from. You just get in touch with the experience, live the experience, and release the experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that we have to hold on to, because, like, I tend to be that analytical intellectual. I have been chasing, like, healing myself for years because I needed to know why. How did I get here so
Yeah.
I can prevent it from ever happening again? But the challenge is that we then perpetuate that issue by just collecting more evidence that there's more stuff for us to work through. And this is why we can't all of a sudden magically manifest a trip to Spain that gets us to Cuba.
It's a knowing. Sometimes you will know actually, because your mind just like takes you back, but it's not the important. The important thing is like to feel the emotion, because this is why it got trapped, and that's why you still carrying an imprint somewhere in your body about that, because maybe you didn't feel safe to express that, so you just stopped it and you just like suppressed it, and it's is there somewhere. So by experiencing and allowing it to come out, that's how you can actually heal. And it doesn't have to be like this year long or 2 years long therapy when you talk through every detail of your childhood. It's not about that. It can be actually, Marisa Peer also talks about it in the rapid transformational hypnotherapy. Like this is like the change can happen in like 1 or 2 sessions. It doesn't have to be like this super long thing.
Plus, in fact, if our vibration, what we speak about and what we focus on are what's creating our reality, then by turning my attention back to that part of my life that was painful and scary and upsetting, I'm actually reinforcing and recreating that. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a double-edged sword where, you're rebuilding your own prison over and over.
Yes, and that's why I think a lot of people don't like to like look at this and work on it. And when you say like inner work and do the inner work, they just have this in like, oh my God, I need to go back there and I need to relive. And like, this is not about that at all, in my experience. And also, it's, I think what I would like to clarify is like a lot of the times, and I did this in the past as well, and I heard that people say like, oh yeah, like you get maybe limiting beliefs because of the traumas that happened to you in childhood. And I always said like, there's literally no trauma in my childhood. And because I had this, that a trauma needs to be this super big thing that we see, in the movies, and like these horrible things that can happen to people. And I was like, no, I'm super lucky, to have like a nice childhood. But I think this is important to know that it doesn't have to be like a big thing. It can literally something that you just see in front of you, that someone like a teacher just calls out on one of your friends in a tone that for you as a kid was scary, and this can be the trigger for you for future things. So it can be like the smallest thing. And I think that's why it's important that when we realize like that, oh, I might go into the circle and I might actually self-sabotage. And that's another thing that a lot of people don't associate with themselves. Oh no, I don't self-sabotage. And when you ask them like, okay, do you maybe like, are you consider yourself a perfectionist? And they would say, oh yeah, like, okay, then that's also like can be self-sabotaging behavior just as much as overthinking.
True, true. I love the idea that you're pointing to about it doesn't have to be a trauma, because I think that there's a component of it that if you're not careful you can get caught up in. It's like, oh well, my childhood was okay, I didn't experience trauma, and so I don't need to go back. Or, oh, that's really silly, like that wouldn't be something that would stop other people, so that must not be it, I must be broken
Yeah.
someplace.
Yeah,
So as
because we compare to like other, like we see big traumas happen to people, or we hear about these, and then we just like, oh my god, no, I'm happy, like my life is perfect, my childhood, my my family is really like did the best job what they could. So like that's not about it. Like you should not compare, like in anything in life, which is very hard to do. Like let's be honest, like we always compare, but in this it's not. It's really just about like whatever you process is just, I like to rephrase it and not call it like trauma. It's just like it's just an unprocessed emotion from your childhood, what as a kid you couldn't process it for what kind of reason, and you probably are not even aware of that many
yeah.
times. Because I don't necessarily work with people with like actual big traumas. I When I work with my clients, like they many times it's just like someone who wants to start a business or really change something in their life, and then they discover that, but I have all of these self-limiting beliefs and the self-doubt, and that's when we just go back a little bit and just like clear some unprocessed emotions, so then they can create the life that they wanted and achieve the goals.
I think that's wonderful. Yeah, and you're not perpetuating the language of victimhood.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's a path that really ends in suffering.
Yeah.
And it isn't necessarily so, because the Buddha says that life is suffering, but life is only suffering because of how we view it. And once we get to the source of the attachment to whether it was good or bad or right or wrong, then we release the suffering.
Exactly.
Hmm. That's
Yeah.
just amazing. And so, like, now what? Like, you've been location independent for 7 years successfully. Like, you haven't ever gone back to live at home.
Like in the first like 2 3 years, I spent quite a few time during the summer in Hungary still. But the last, I have to say, since COVID, I like during that time I moved to Lisbon, and ever since it's becoming like less and less. I think I spent maybe 2 3 weeks in Hungary, which is yeah, it's sad because I would love to have my family around more,
Mm.
but I would also I like to take them where I'm at. So it was really nice. My mom came to visit me in Mexico, which was a really big thing, and I was really proud of her. So it was really nice. So it's nice to have these family times like outside of your home country as well.
That's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So,
Yeah.
where do you go from here if you're already living the perfect life?
Oh, it's not that it's perfect. Like it's like there's always things. I think one of the biggest lessons that I learned is that you can change your external environment as much as you want. You can move from one place to another, but if you don't work on yourself, then you just bring everything else to the next. So basically it's always about the inner transformation, and that is a long journey. So as much as I work on myself and how others work on themselves too, like there's always something to work on. So it's not that I have this perfectly figured out life, and there's nothing like, there's so many things in my life as well that I'm constantly working on.
Hmm. That is an
Yeah,
absolute truth because I'm a firm believer that as long as there is still breath in the body, there is still work to be done.
exactly.
Because
Like,
that's entirely the point of this journey, this experience.
yeah, yeah, it's a long, and of course, like, this 7 years as well for me, like, it doesn't mean that it was an easy ride. I made transitions like just recently, like last year as well, which was very hard again, but it was a different setup. So there are things, there are changes, a lot of changes as well. So it's not like that 7 years ago, oh my god, I made this bold move, and now ever since is like life is just easy. I don't think it's ever like that. And yeah, it's important to be like, and stay on your own journey, and your own growth journey.
Hmm. It's almost, well, it's exactly as if when you step into the new circumstances, a new view is revealed, and there's an entirely new set of unconscious beliefs that you uncover,
Mm,
new desires, new things that you're not interested in continuing. And so then you get to start the process all over again.
yeah, exactly. And the more, it's kind of like there's always a new level. There's always a new level of of this whole thing. So I see it as a, yeah, as just like part of my life. And but I really enjoy it. Like, personal development is, I think, is one of the biggest things that I'm like so passionate about for like many, many years. So you always try to figure out better ways to set up your days and your work, and like what is new ways. And of course, like right now as well, like even like work, like setting up, leaving something behind that I used to work on in the past few years, and like coming back to full-time coaching, and again, like I feel like almost like starting from scratch.
Hmm.
So there's a lot to do and work on.
Constant renewal.
Yes.
Well, is there any place else that you'd like to go from here?
In terms of our conversation.
Well, yeah, I guess in terms of our conversation, yeah.
um
Any
yeah.
threads that we've talked about over the course of our conversation that you want to dive into, or if you'd like any aspects that you'd like to highlight for the people who might be listening, things that you think would be important for them to remember. Because like honestly, you've had a super magical experience, and I after decades of spiritual practice and personal development can really hear all of the places where you have done the work and taken ground and shifted context. Is there something that you want to make sure is clear for somebody who's watching this going, wow, she lives a magical life, like I could never do that?
I think if someone would think that, that's already something that is not true, because I'm not different to anyone listening. And I think this is very, very important for everyone to know. Like, everything that I did, or the life that I'm living, this is possible. And I'm not mean it in this way that, oh, everyone says this, but it's truly, I 100% believe it, that I'm not like anything special. Anyone can do it. It's really, I see it as we talked about throughout the whole interview, that it's the inner work that is super important. Because maybe it sounds interesting for someone, like, oh, this lifestyle could be interesting, but like a lot of people try it out, to be honest. And now I'm just talking about, for example, the location independent thing, and then they figure out that, oh, this is not for me, and that's totally okay. I think what's important is just to ask yourself the question, like, am I happy? Like, if not, what is that something that would make me happy? What is the thing that excites me right now? And just start, doing small steps to get closer to that, and like not to let it into this one day pile. I had this sign, and I don't know if subconsciously it worked on me or not, but when I was right before I left to start this nomading life 7 years ago, the apartment where I lived, I had a sign, and it said, do it now, because sometimes someday becomes never. And I do believe that this is really how we live life. That is just like, oh yeah, we always like, yes, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, I will do this, or I will do this when I will, I don't know, be in a new job or lose weight. Or we always have these conditions
Yeah.
that we will do the fun thing and the exciting things that is actually truly important for us when, and then there's a condition. So I would just like really just, yeah, just ask yourself, like, what is this condition that I put there, and why is it there in the first place, and why can't you just go for it and start working towards it already now? Just don't let it feel. And like, procrastination is something that I think many of us do many times. I'm guilty of it too. um, and yeah, it's never nice to look back, and I would rather have, and make mistakes and see like, okay, this didn't work, or okay, might not be the thing that I wanted, then just, end up 20 years, 30 years from now and just ask myself like, oh my God, what if I would have done that, and then just have this regret that now it might be too late.
Mm.
So I think that's because we all want different things. Like, not what I want is not something that necessarily you want or other people want, but we all have these things that is exciting and important for us. So I just want to just encourage everyone to just figure out and ask for help if you need to, and help someone figure out what is that you want, and why are you stopping yourself, and why are you keep telling all these lies to yourself, why you cannot have that, because we all have these, like, this inner critic in our mind is so loud. I work on myself for many many years, and I still catch myself like having a very strong inner critic, especially when I'm about to do something that is very unknown and like new again and scary. So then it gets even more louder. And a good tip that I would give, which is I tell it to my clients as well, but it's a silly one, but I think it's a super powerful one as well, that it's very important to differentiate yourself and create distance from the inner critic in you. Because the inner critic is, we can call it the inner critic, the ego, whatever it is, how you call it, that's just one part of you that is trying to keep you safe and also doubting, because its job is to, no, 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 this is where we are, this is safe here, don't move from here. So just give it a name. And every time when, for example, you think of something to do something, and then my inner critic is Karen. I apologize for all the Karens out there, but this is the name that I found. And if I think of something, and then the thought in my head is like, oh no, like, you cannot do that, then I bring awareness here, and then I repeat it. Ah, interesting. Karen thinks I can do it. And then you have this distance, and you can ask yourself, like, do I believe her, or do I choose to have a different thought and a different belief about this? So I think this is very like powerful. And at the same time, I also have like a name for my cheerleader, which is Sophie. So then you can decide, like, who do I want to believe? Like Sophie, who was like, yes, do it, go for it, who was very very loud 7 years ago when I wanted to go to Cuba. And thank God that she was loud and I didn't listen to the inner critic one. So I think this is like, it's so interesting. Like, and I started using it, and really powerful, when every day, when, sometimes you wake up like anxious, or like, oh my God, I want to do this, but no. And then you talk yourself out of it. And then just, okay, just ask yourself, who do I want to be in charge today? Like, do I want to give the stage to Karen and like we just play it super safe and like no 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 don't do anything, or do I want to actually risk a little bit and just go with my cheerleader and then be a little bit more bold and brave?
Well spoken. Thank you so much, Dori. No, very, very powerfully said.
Thank
Okay,
you.
amazing. Well, again, I thank you so much for reaching out, for agreeing to be on the podcast, and for connecting. I am so excited to get to know you, and I can't wait for other people to hear this conversation and see what they create with their life.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and for this nice conversation.
Very good. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of The Secret of My Success, the podcast where we explore what it means to live a fulfilling life. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. We appreciate your support. Would y'all just like the episode, please? Show me some love.